Okay, so today here we are in our second week officially of online class. Um, and so what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to re-go over checkpoint one. I know there's a few of you who've already done it, and that is wonderful and awesome. So if this doesn't apply to you, then don't worry about it. But just to kind of quickly recap what that was, and then if there's any questions, answer questions, and then that'll pretty much be it. The rest of the time would be independent time for you to work on the case study checkpoint. So let's just jump right into looking at that. Um, so just as a reminder, this is your case studies checkpoint this time around. It does also have an accompanying readings and a visual art and visual aid art piece directions. So from the readings, you just have to pick two of the countries any of the readings talk about. So you could read from Southeast Asia, and you could read from Africa, and you could pick one country from each, or you could just read from Africa and you could pick two countries from Africa. Doesn't really matter how you go about it. I just want you to see if you can, focus on picking two out of all of those. Um, of course, if you want to read about the other places as well, then go ahead and read all of those. It's really interesting to kind of get a good wider view and comparison um, of the different countries as they emerged as modern nations. So that's what we're kind of looking at. We're kind of identifying those patterns that we're seeing of what being a modern nation usually means. So that's what these questions are kind of designed to walk you through the reading. Um, so um, you want to just answer them as you kind of keep reading. So just first one is, what country did you do? Tell us the country that you did, please. And then one of the things that helps us identify modern nations is the government. So usually after independence is a really good place to start for when you are emerging as a nation. So that could be independence from a colonial power, independence from an imperial power, independence from, even just like an in-country dictatorship or military rule. So whatever that independence is defined by, what happens after that independence is kind of what we look at for um, modernism. And a lot of that can be told through like what the government is up to. So um, trying to figure out from the reading, well, what did the government do after that independence? Did they try to instill democracy? Did they, um, did they kind of fail at trying to install democracy? Did one person really take the lead? So you're looking at kind of clues and hints to what happened to them through their government. Um, then the next is to describe two specific struggles in the country after they gained independence. So obviously gaining independence doesn't make it like automatically a modern country and it's brilliant and it's great and everything is happy-go-lucky, wonderful, right? Um, Even like taking the United States for an example, it took a while to develop like the Constitution, right? It took a while to develop all of those laws. It took a while to add amendments to the Constitution to change what had been existing and say, like slavery, right? And say, hey, that was, we had to have our own independent like civil war about this. That was wrong, and here's how we need to change it, right? So that would be a struggle in the United States, was the difference in morals about slavery or the difference in opinions about slavery, right? Or keeping the union together. Um, so just find what those struggles are, because those often tell us a little bit about um, how the country came to be and how the country had to face those challenges and what they did to overcome them. And then the last question is just to name and describe a specific success in the country. You know what? We can just change this right now. I don't know if it'll help, but um, name and describe a specific success in the country after they gained independence. So just like really what were they, what were they successful at? Were they able to um, establish, a voter's right, and everybody who is eligible to vote could and was able to vote? Was that something that they were successful at? Were they successful at laying down some really good institutions? Were they successful at keeping out old enemies or declaring for them that this is what was going to happen? Um, so those are the four kind of short questions. And then the other part is the visual aid piece. So again, that's in the directions over here. And it's just to pick something that goes along with the information that you found in your reading. So however you want to visually represent that is totally fine. Um, like it doesn't have to be anything super, super fancy, but just putting in a little bit of, kind of artistic splash to it can make it a little bit more interesting or make it a little bit more fun. So just remember that to do that part as well. And that's pretty much it for checkpoint one. Um, are there any questions about checkpoint one specifically, or any other part of the project at this point in time? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Oh, um, yes, just what you learned about that one country. So it's specific to the country that you read about, and then just kind of it could be like a collage of things, it could be an image of things, or you could choose one of the suggestions in the list, but just to represent what you learned in that country. Perfect. All right. Any other questions? I'll give a typing buffer just in case. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop that little directions lecture part then. And if there's anything else people need, you can ask me independently, or you can go ahead and get to work on checkpoint one. Cool. Thanks.